Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another guide. Today we have Melee Shiv on the menu. Shiv has recently become one of my favorite heroes to play, especially with the melee build. He has one of the highest melee damage in the game because his ult, when maxed out of rage, it gives him an extra 25% overall damage done. And because he has a dash as mobility as well, his toolkit is really great for being super tanky and dealing a lot of damage with melee. By the way, guys, we are close to 700,000 subscribers on the channel. Once we hit that, we're going to show you a special top 5 duo lane combos video. So please click the subscribe button as it helps me a lot. Thank you very much. So if you've never played Shiv before, he has a dagger that he can throw. It bleeds the target. And if you throw multiple daggers at the same target within a certain time frame, they will stack and do more damage. When you have max rage, the knives will also ricochet to another enemy and apply daggers to them as well. This is what it looks like. And then when you toss through, now you have 2 stacks on him. And you can keep refreshing that. Then his second ability is Slice and Dice. It makes him dash like this. And when you're max rage, it gives you a ghost dash. When you now dash, you get a second ghost dash after. Another interesting thing about dash is that when it's maxed out, it reduces the cooldown by 2 seconds per enemy hero hit. So when you're playing a very tanky Shiv, you don't want to play out in the open. You want to force people to chase you into corridors and dash through multiple heroes because you can get a lot of dash resets. And then Bloodletting is a passive that makes him, some of the burst damage he takes is turned into damage over time. So 30% of the damage he takes becomes a damage over time instead. So the way this works is that you'll get a second health bar that becomes orange, and you can choose to defer a portion of that damage by activating this passive. Okay, so now you see I have an orange health bar and my health is ticking down. And when I defer, you see now I deferred some of it away. So you can, whenever you take a lot of damage, some of that's going to still be a damage over time on you. And then you can click Bloodletting to remove some of that active damage. And then finally, his ult is called Killing Blow. It's another mobility ability, which is why I think Melee Shiv is so good. And it jumps, lunges onto a target, and executes them if they are under a certain threshold. And this is also where the passive comes into play. So when Shiv has maxed out his Killing Blow, not only do you leap like this, it's a pretty cool ability. Whenever they are below the kill threshold, you insta-kill them. And the cool thing is, it resets the cooldown when it's maxed. For those of you who have played Axe in Dota 2, it's a very similar thing. Let's get right into the game. Okay, so this was a Shiv game I played earlier today with Red, and I wanted to explain to you guys how I play this hero, how to build this hero, and how you guys can get better at controlling team fights and controlling the map with Shiv. Also, another reason why I think Melee Shiv is so good is because it generates much more rage when dealing damage with melee. So you're almost guaranteed to always have full rage during the team fights. So now we just have the regular laning stage. Shiv has a shotgun, which is really good for last hitting. So you're just trying to throw some daggers at the enemies as well as harassing them a little bit. You can see Lash is already taking quite a bit of a chunk. And we're constantly just shoving the lane. We want to play aggressive here. The more aggressive we can play, the more freedom we have to deny the enemy and get more map control as well. And because Shiv is pretty strong pretty early on, you don't need to have to worry too much. Oh, we already got a kill actually. She died from the mobs. Unlucky. You don't need to be afraid of playing aggro with Shiv. The one thing I will say though is that he's not super tanky before he gets his bloodletting and before he gets a few items. So just like the Tank Infernus guide that I posted a few days ago, we're also aiming for 8 vitality items with Melee Shiv because it's a very similar play style, which I really enjoy, which is just out-sustaining all the enemy damage. Another thing that a lot of people don't know is that Shiv also has a right click that I forgot to mention earlier. It does twice as much damage and it gives you a small knockback. And my current biggest skill issue with Shiv is that I always forget to use the right click. So don't be like me. Remember to use the right click. Okay, so right now we have bought melee lifesteal and resto shot. So the cool thing about the restorative shot, which recently got buffed a bit by the way, is that it's so easy to hit heroes with it. So this is one of the highest sustaining items as long as you can hit the enemy hero pretty much on cooldown. And because you have a shotgun, only one of your pellets needs to hit the enemy hero to get 40 healing from it. And you can see it pops up on your screen, a small little, see that there? You saw that little square there? That means that your resto shot is ready. Also, the Lash just jumped over our heavy melee and we died, so that's very unlucky. So yeah, that's why resto shot is really good on shotgun characters, and it also gives you some bullet resist. So this is just a very, very good laning item for Abrams and Shiv and so on. Melee lifesteal is the next natural item. It also makes you more tanky, gives you some health. And because we are making a melee build, it means that Life Strike is one of the integral components of this build later in the game. So there isn't really much more to do right now. You just keep laning, keep focusing on last hits. You can see that we currently are slightly ahead of in souls. Vindicta is on 1.7, we're on 2.3 and 2.5. And we are constantly playing very aggressive. We're not letting them just farm. See that? Even now they're pushed into the side here on the left, and we're constantly just harassing them as much as possible. I'm actually going in here for a kill. Maybe a little bit crazy, but I know Red will trade me. And very important to use your bloodletting. When you notice that the orange bar is getting pretty big, you have to use your bloodletting. I like to be very aggressive. That's why I play like this. Got 100 health left. Oh, going for the punch. And it pays off. Now you see the bar is only orange. So now I need to heal myself or else I'll die. See that? So because I have melee lifesteal, I ran into this creep and I meleeed it once. And that's why I didn't die. Because bloodletting can kill you. If you take a big burst damage and you run away, don't forget that if the entire health bar is orange, you will die. So make sure that you either press bloodletting or you find some way to heal yourself so your entire health bar isn't orange. So that's pretty much it for the laning stage. Once you get your ultimate, you suddenly have 2 gap closers and you are quite strong. And like I mentioned in my previous guide too, always pay attention to if the other team has 3,000 souls as well. As if you are slightly above 3,000 souls and they are slightly under 3,000 souls, you have a huge advantage in the next fight because they do not have their ultimates yet. And that is why we are just playing so aggressive right now. See, because Lash and Vindicta does not have their ults, so we do not want to let them back in the game. Both me and Red, we have our ultimates. But they're getting very close. And this is why I decide to go back and reset here, because I want to try to get a fight in before they both get their ultimates. Okay, so now we have close quarters, which is a natural item. Also, another thing that not a lot of people know, melee damage is 50% of your weapon damage. So whenever an item gives you weapon damage, that also boosts your melee damage by 50%. Now, the interesting thing about this, it means that any item that is good for a shotgun build, like close quarters and point blank, will also be good for a melee build, because obviously you're always going to be 15 meters within range. But here is one thing that a lot of people don't know, and that is that melee damage is considered bullet damage. So when you have items like, for instance, Hunter's Aura that reduces bullet resistance, or Bullet Resist Shredder also gives bullet resist. Okay, I just dodged the Lash ults. No biggie. Oh, here we might get the first execute. Oh, we're chasing Vindicta here. She was trying to hide. This is something that's very important to know, is that bullet resistance reduction is the highest way of increasing melee damage. Because when you buy items for weapon damage, it only gives you 50% damage increase. But when you buy items that reduce bullet resistance, that is technically the same amount of damage increase as you would get from a weapon, because melee is considered bullet damage. So that is why resistance reductions is extremely important for melee builds. Anyway, this is a pretty active early game so far. It's kind of the way I like to play too. It's just more fun. And we also got Spirit Strike now. Spirit Strike is another natural item to have in a melee build. It does some extra damage for your punch, increases melee damage. These are all pretty standard things. It's almost the same items you would buy when you play a melee Abrams as well. The thing about playing Shiv is that if you're playing from behind, he is terrible because you kind of rely on being tanky and strong, and you want to get resets on your killing blow, and you want to also buy heal bane, so you also get a heal every time you get a killing blow, and you can kind of snowball in team fights. So once we get our farming item, we are going to disappear into the jungle for a little bit. But because that's not as essential until you pass 10 minutes, we are still kind of chilling and just winning our lane. You see, we still have 1,000 souls lead on the enemy laners, so we are still just doing our job. We're harassing a little bit, trying to be annoying, and not let them back into the game. Once you pass 10 minutes, the souls in the lane are no longer shared, and it's no longer beneficial to just be 2 people in the lane all the time. And that's why we're now slowly starting to focus more on jungling. And now we're just looking to find a good jungle rotation. And this is different depending on what your teammates are doing too. And it's very important to think about what heroes you have on your team. For instance, you have a Infernus on your team, and he is a hyperscaler, so you don't want to steal his farm either. So if you notice now, Infernus and I, we are on the opposite sides of our map, and he farms these camps, and I farm these camps. And this is also where map control comes into play, where it's extremely important to push guardians. So for instance, you can see how we have taken the Guardian in this lane. It means that if we push up, it's much easier to push up this lane. So you'll see that's where I'm doing now. Now I'm going over here and I'm starting to shove this lane. And because there's no Guardian here, I can shove this lane quite far and force a rotation from the enemy. And that's what we call split pushing. And the more map control you have, the bigger souls advantage you can get. So you can see right now we are actually 10k souls ahead because most of us did pretty well in the laning stage. And I am happy with not really joining team fights yet because I haven't really reached my biggest power spike. And another reason for that is also if you look at our unsecured souls now, even before we kill this camp, we have 1,000 unsecured souls. Which means that if we take team fights now and we die, those souls will drop. So that's why we only choose to take fights when we don't have a lot of unsecured souls and we just buy our new item, just like we did in the Tank Infernus guide. That's essential just common knowledge, regardless of what hero you're playing when you're farming. We're also taking these loser camps here. These camps are not the biggest priority, but when the rest of the map starts to get empty, this is a nice farm to pass by, especially because right now we were split pushing up this lane, and then we're waiting for the lane to get pushed back by Warden, and now we're perfectly weaving in these 2 camps before these minions start hitting the walker. So it's very important here that you pay attention to when these creeps are about to hit the walker, because we just got another 500 souls because we managed to get back out to these troopers before they got killed by the walker. And it's even worth it to just go out and take those if you don't have time to take both camps. It's perfectly fine to take 1 camp and then go clear the troopers and then go back. So right now we're sitting on 8,000 souls, which obviously means that this is a terrible time to fight because even though we have 16k souls, our power level right now is only half of that because we've got half of these souls stocked up. So what this means is that we either buy items or we keep farming. And you can already notice now that because we're playing slightly selfish, and that's okay as long as your team is aware of it, you can try to just gain an advantage by out-farming the enemies. So we're only like 8,000-9,000 souls ahead. If you look at my power level now, I'm already a lot stronger than most of the other players on the team. And this is something I wanted to mention, that if you notice my farming route now, I started here, I split pushed this lane up, and then I cleared camps on the way back because the more this lane is pushed up, the easier it is for you to farm the camps here without being pestered by the enemies. And then we took these 2 camps while the lane was being pushed back, and then the wave was about to crash into the walker. So then we took them out, and then we took the shortest route possible into this tier 3 camp here. Now you can notice that there's no other camps left on this side of the map. So what is the most efficient thing to do now? Because this entire side is empty. And here's the thing, and I'll show you that when you're at the tier 3 camp back here. After you take this tier 3 camp, you take these stairs down here because there's a ton of boxes here and they give souls and they give weapon buffs. Always remember to take these. The statues have weapon buffs and cooldown and health, and the boxes have souls. And now we're at the secret shop, so we didn't even have to go back to the base to shop. So this was like a perfect farming rotation. We farmed this entire side of the map, and then we got in here. So now we have reached our first power spike. We've managed to clear out most of our unsecured souls. Unfortunately, we didn't have a flex slot, so we couldn't buy the next item. So ideally, we would buy one more item here to not lose any souls. But we are feeling strong. If you look at the souls as well, we're pretty strong. But because they have a Vindicta here, we want to try to fight inside. You can notice I'm a melee build. I don't want to be too much in the open unless I have to. And see that we get Vindicta there. We get a nice owl from red. We're somehow still alive. Still alive. And that, my friends, is the power of melee Shiv. Right there. And we made it with 5 health. The recent item pickups we got Berserker, which makes sense because it gives bullet resistance, which is good. It also gives a static ammo instead of a percentage of ammo, and that is great for shotgun characters that have slow fire rates and low ammo count. It's not going to be good for Haze, for instance, but for Shiv, it's going to be quite a big ammo increase. And it constantly increases your weapon damage as you take sustained damage, and it also works with your bloodletting, so you're just, in fights, you're just constantly going to have max stacks of Berserker. Then we have Bullet Resist Shredder. Gives you 12% minus bullet resist. That means a 12% increase in your melee damage. You have some more bullet resist and health as well. And you have many sources that deal spirit damage. Your Spirit Strike does spirit damage, your Slice and Dice and Serrated Knives, and Torment Pulse. And then finally we got Healbane and Life Strike. So the entire essence of this build is Life Strike. It makes your melee apply a movement slow, and it also heals you for 55% of the melee damage you deal plus 110. So once you get a lot of damage, you also get more sustained because that means it's also going to heal you more. And this is on a 5-second cooldown, which is pretty short. And then melee charge is also important, I forgot to mention earlier, because not only does it increase the heavy melee distance, so you lunge forward, but it also reloads your weapon instantly or gives you up to 100% bonus ammo every 10 seconds when you melee. So essentially, you never have to reload when you have melee charge and Berserker. You should always be able to just melee to reload. So this is now, you can also notice we have used up all the item slots, and that is intentionally because you want to be as strong as possible, because each item gives you also a passive 10% weapon damage or 14% base health and stuff. So you really don't want to have any of these slots open if you want to be as strong as possible. And now we're essentially just waiting for the flex slots to open. And because we farmed for so long that we were a lot stronger than the opponents, we just managed to kind of brawl out a pretty hefty 3v3. We were tanking multiple ults, and the thing that kept us alive was actually Healbane. Because there's a really nice synergy here, and that is that your killing blow, it leaps towards an enemy and instantly kills them if their health is below a certain threshold, 28%. And by the way, they will glow red whenever their health is below threshold, and there will also be an arrow pointing towards the target. And that is meant to help you identify a natural target for killing blow. And the reason why Healbane is so good with this is because when a hero gets killed, you heal 350 health on that kill. And because you usually have some leftover damage that you're taking with bloodletting, Healbane kind of can save your ass when you technically have taken too much damage and you will die from it, but you win your duel. And then you have a few seconds where bloodletting can still kill you, but Healbane kind of saves you out of that. And when you're in the middle of a fight where multiple targets can die, Healbane can really be the difference maker in constantly making you snowball by being able to keep jumping to new targets with Killing Blow. If you hit multiple enemies with Life Strike, does it proc for the total damage done? It used to, but I'm pretty sure that was not intended and they fixed it. I'm pretty sure. So now we're back to having no unsecured souls, and we are much more comfortable with being more offensive. So you can notice that the first thing, aggressive, sorry, that was Norwegian. The first thing I'm doing now is I'm stealing their camps. You see that? I'm stealing their camps and I'm up in their tower. I see a warden here. Oh, he's ulting me? Oh no. It's an ulting warden. What do we do, guys? We punch him. We punch him, guys. Because when he's ulting, he's not gonna parry. And that's another thing to mention too. You have to be wary of that people will parry you, and the better the enemies are, the more you need to practice your parry baiting. Parry baiting essentially means charging up your heavy melee and then turning 180 degrees right before your melee hits. Because if they parry and you don't actually melee, they cannot parry for another 5 seconds. So if you've noticed, and this is something you have to learn on a game-to-game basis, that if you notice that they're parrying a lot, you have to try to bait out their parry first, and then you can punch them 3 to 4 times before they can parry again. So now we're back at it again. We have started to get a solid souls lead here. We're comfortable in this situation. We have a slight souls lead as a whole, and there's just stuff to farm. And as long as there's stuff to farm, it's always worth trying to find a good farming route. And then suddenly we see a Geist here, who's a little bit too far up. Not sure what she was doing, but she got punished for it, so she's probably not going to do that again. We'll take that. And right now, the biggest issue is flex slots. And there are 2 ways of getting more flex slots. And this is another cool thing that is nice about having a flexible build. And that is that how can you still gain power with your hero when you don't have access to the flex slots? Obviously, this Guardian should have been dead ages ago, or a second walker should have been down, so we've got an extra flex slot. But let's say you don't. Are you just going to fall behind, or is there a way where your build can continue to improve in power level, even though you would ideally buy... I would ideally buy Spirit Armor and Healing Booster here, for instance. Also, I completely forgot to mention this guide is available on mobalytics.gg, or in-game, you can just search for AverageJonas or Melee Shiv, and you'll find them in both places, and there'll also be a link in the description down below to the actual guide. So, since we don't have flex slots and we had a lot of money, what we did, we just skipped over Spirit Armor and Healing Booster for now, and we went for Hunter's Aura and Point Blank. And because we already had Close Quarters, that's just an upgrade, so you don't really need an extra flex slot. And the other item is Hunter's Aura, and we just sold Resto Shot for it, because Resto Shot is mostly a laning item. So now we have a lot more damage, and we also have an extra movement slow. And these movement slows stack, and they both apply on melee. So Point Blank's movement slow will always slow them when you melee them as well. Even though it says your bullets apply movement slow, melee damage is considered bullet damage, and that is why slowing bullets, Soul Shredder, all these items, they also apply when you melee someone. So basically we skipped over some tanky items while waiting for our flex slots to get up. When you see the buff here that says 45% weapon damage in close combat, that means your melee is doing 22.5% more damage, because your melee is always half of your weapon damage. And once again, like I mentioned earlier, notice how the first thing I do as soon as we take more map control is to start invading their jungle. Start stealing as much as you can. And this is where it's important to communicate to your team. Right now, for instance, I told my McGinnis that, hey, can you stay outside this building while I steal their slot machines so I don't get jumped? Because right now I have 1,500 unsecured souls, so I would lose 1,500 souls if I die now. So he's kind of staying outside, bodyguarding a little bit while I steal some of their farm. And I can't stress this enough, how important it is to always think about objectives. Whenever you push somewhere, think, okay, what do I have access to now that I didn't have before? See, I'm clearing out all of their jungle just because we took one Guardian. And this is why taking out these Guardians is so important. And this is something that is very typical in higher elo lobbies. You'll notice how there's almost no jungle camps left. The only jungle camps left are pretty much the loser camps in the corner. And like one camp here next to their base. Now it's starting to get more scarce in terms of farming. And that's another thing to have in mind, is that if you're noticing that there's no farm on your side of the map and there's a lot farm on the enemy side of the map, you should try to force a fight. Because it's always more beneficial for them to keep farming because you guys don't have access to any of the camps. Or you could run an urn. But we are starting to get to this point now where we are way ahead in souls. We now have 26k souls. That is way above 1k souls per minute. Okay, and now we can see that our fight is breaking out here. And the first thing I do is run back to base and try to get rid of some souls because I want to be as strong as possible. So here's another thing I did now. And this is something to have in mind, how you don't always follow the correct order of a guide because it depends on how many flex slots you have. So I currently had about 4,500 souls. A lot of them were unsecured and I only have one flex slot to spend it on. Now the guide would tell me to buy healing booster here, but I'm going to have a much bigger power spike by buying improved spirit armor because that's a 4,250 souls item. And this also means that I use up all my unsecured souls. So this is a perfect time to fight. I am as strong as I can be. I've spent all my souls and I have nothing to lose in terms of unsecured souls. And I have more souls than anyone else in the game. So now we take our gloves off and we fight. Okay, so now we're seeing that McGinnis is being chased by 5 people. She dies, so that is unfortunate. But now we are very hungry for a fight. We barely have any camps left to farm. We don't want the other team to farm and catch up in souls. We want to fight while we are ahead. And there is a walker here. And this is a big objective. And remember what I said. You want to force them into an alleyway. That's where you are the strongest. You do not want to fight out here. So notice what I'm doing here. I'm running into the side. I'm trying to bait them to follow me into this corridor. Can we get a little punch there around the corner? Here we go. Now we go. Oh, now they're chasing. Oh, Shiv is in here. Okay, this is a 1v3 inside the Kelvin ult. They both tried to parry, but we waited. And we get a heal bane heal and a reset. We get another punch in, another heal. Look at our health. Look at our health. We get another heal. And another heal. And finally a parry goes through, but at this point it's too late. And the only reason why we were alive there was because we made sure that we hit a perfect power spike. We got our improved spirit armor, we had no unsecured souls left, and we chose to fight when we had the biggest possible advantage over the enemy, as well as forcing them to fight in an area where you are the strongest. And I know some of you mentioned that people will parry, but guess what? Both of them tried to parry and both of them failed. Because when you dash through an opponent, sometimes they will panic parry as soon as you dash through them. So try to have in the back of your mind, are these guys usually parrying? What do they do? And because your dash reduces cooldown when it hits multiple heroes, it means that when you're fighting in that corridor, you get multiple dashes back and forth. So we maxed our ult first. We got just a few points. We got 1 point in knives, and we got 1 point in slice and dice, and 1 point in bloodletting. We maxed our ult first, and then our dash second, and then bloodletting third. We don't really focus a lot on the damage from knives. They're mostly just there to slow them for gap closing. But yeah, that's the skill order. And once again, like when you search up this build in game, it will tell you the order of upgrading abilities. Okay, so now we hit another 6.4k souls, and we only have 1 flex slot, so that means let's buy another big item. And because we are playing melee Shiv, we're buying Colossus. This is the ultimate melee item. It gives you a lot of bonus health. It gives you a 20% melee damage and 20% weapon damage. And that actually means this is technically 30% melee damage, because weapon damage also gives half of weapon damage also becomes melee. And when you pop it, you gain extra bullet and spirit resist, and you slow the movement and dash speeds of enemies nearby. So now you also can punch more freely And you now have stacking slows. You have movement slow from Colossus, plus Life Strike, plus Point Blank. The enemies will not be able to escape you. And you're now starting to get very tanky. And this is where the build is starting to get very fun. And once again, I can't stress this enough. We are very far ahead in souls now. And that's because we made some selfish decisions earlier. And once again, it's very important that this is communicated to the team. I'm split pushing this, or I'm farming here. I'm waiting for my next item. Like, you can't just like, if you're gonna be selfish with farming more, it's not really selfish either. It's just like planning your power spikes, because not every hero needs to have tons of souls to be efficient. Anyway, here's another fight breaking out. We already lost our Wraith, and see, these guys are all running out in the open. That's not exactly where you want to fight with a melee build. So we're kind of just poking a little bit, hoping that someone will be easier to find. And then we heard rumors that someone went down here. Oh, well, I didn't find him, I guess. Oh, he went for the TP, I think. You can't see it in the replay, but it actually shows an arrow now. Oh, yeah. Kill him. Kill him. Oh, that little stun on the wall actually was very helpful there. Also, I will say that heroes like McGinnis are actually very helpful to team up with Shiv, because walling someone off makes it much easier to play a punching build. So now that we've killed 4 enemies, it's very natural to go for mid-boss. By the way, mid-boss dies faster when you punch him. Most heroes do more damage to mid-boss while punching, because there's like a DPS check shield you have to punch through first. So burst damage is actually better. And the only person that can really contest us is Haze. But we already noticed that he does not have Silencer or Unstoppable yet. So we know that if he tries to contest it, he will probably just die. Okay, so now we have mid-boss. When you have mid-boss, this means that all the lanes will push by themselves, because the troopers now have 70% extra health. And everybody on the team has higher health and lower respawn time. So this is a great time to fight. Okay, somehow we jumped the wrong target there. We are getting slowing hexed and stunned and everything. We're tanking. Do you see how much you're tanking? Like, we're tanking so much damage now. We just tanked like multiple ultimates, and we are still on 1500 health. And we're pushing the walker, easy PC. And this is why I can't stress enough how, like, don't run into team fights unless you are pretty sure that this is a good fight for you to join. Like, be greedy, get your farm, get your souls advantage, and then become a monster afterwards. We also need this shrine to get a flex slot. See, there we go. Now we got another flex slot, and this opens up a bigger power spike for all of us. And here's one thing that's interesting now. You may ask yourself, if you're looking at this now, you'll see that there's 4 people dead, but there's only like a 10-second respawn timer. We all still have the rejuve buff. We all still have a few ultimates, but we are choosing to go back. And I'll explain why. First of all, our main mission right now was to get another flex slot, and you get that by taking out the shrine. Now, because the rejuve buff pushed up every lane, you notice how we technically have control of the entire map now. So instead of having another risky fight where we might lose a few teammates, we could win, but it's also much, why risk it? It's not like we're that far ahead. We're just like 20k ahead at this point, which isn't a lot in 27 minutes. But now we have access to so many objectives. So instead of fighting in their base for as long as possible, we get in, we get our flex slot, and then we start to spread out. And what we want to do now, we want to clear out as many camps and objectives as possible on their side of the map before they regain their map control. Because once they regain their map control, if all the camps are gone, then they don't really get any benefit from regaining that map control. So you notice how the first thing I do, I tell my team to split up, and I start clearing all the camps that are nearby the base. We get that one, and we get this one, and we're basically just like slowly retreating. We also don't really want to fight them on their terms in their base. It's better to fight out here. So I'm just yoinking all of this pretty quickly. And taking the slot machine. And now you notice that means we also can buy another big item, especially because we now have all the flex slots available. The team is now like, okay, guys, we still want to fight. Which you can. You notice how they keep playing aggressive here. They're still quite far up on the map. But I did tell the teammates to wait because now I have 2,000 unsecured and now I can be very strong. So now I bought Leech and Healing Booster. And now we have 8 vitality items. And it's a good time to fight. So we go in once again. We get stuck by the Vindicta. We're going for melee. We missed the melee. That's not ideal. But okay. Okay, we get 2 kills there. We get cursed. Oh god, there's so much happening. And this is what we call a little bit too deep, guys. And then the Geist swap happens. So notice how big the orange bar is now. Obviously that Geist swap was a little bit unlucky. And of course, that was way too deep. But that is also the classic phenomenon of I have more souls than everybody else and I just want to run at them. We call that limit testing. I think if it wasn't for the Geist ult, we would be fine. And I think it's very important to press Bloodletting right after you get Geist ulted because you're going to have a massive damage over time. But either way, because we had the rejuve buff, the respawn was lower, so it wasn't a huge deal. We spent most of our souls before dying, so that wasn't a huge deal. And we're kind of just slowing down the momentum a little bit more. The enemies, they are currently also just like slowly pushing back out the lanes, and now we're both just kind of just trying to reach equilibrium. The only interesting thing on the map right now is the urn, so let's see if we choose to do something about that. McKinney grabs the urn, and in the meantime we kind of just push out the lanes a little bit. Kelvin decides to jump me, which is pretty risky, but anyway. And this is exactly where we like to fight. Oh, Kelvin hits a good parry there. So now we know that Kelvin is going to try to parry next time. And we want to keep like falling back here because there's a Vindicta above us. We want to make sure that the Vindicta doesn't have an angle on us. Anyway, now that the ults are starting to go out, now we can start to like really getting in there. We always have to check. We noticed that this is risky. That one was risky. Geist had her ult. If she was fast enough there, she could have ulted us. But either way, she didn't. So we're chilling. But yeah, like don't fight in the open. Try to always like fight in the areas where you have the biggest advantage. And now the game is pretty much over. Also, this is a pretty cool trick, guys. So jumping up on this wall here, you can do a double jump into a wall jump into a heavy melee or a dash. See that? And then you get up there. It's pretty cool. Sometimes you can catch people off guard. Also notice how like our rage bar is almost always up, and that is because melee damage, like I mentioned earlier, it gives you so much more rage, and that means we're constantly doing more damage and we're constantly moving at an increased movement speed, and it just makes you such a strong force to be reckoned with. We're literally hitting the patron for 900 damage. Okay, here comes the last resort from the enemy. We pop Colossus. It's one dead, and there we go. All right. So there you have it. Now we can quickly look at the post-match screen as well. We had 46,000 souls, 21,000 healing. So to recap quickly, I didn't talk too much about like the exact combos you do and stuff, but I felt like the video is kind of self-explanatory. You usually dash through them and then you follow up with a heavy melee, and then you can use your ult to gap close. Sometimes it's okay to use the ult to gap close if you don't have your dash, even if they're not below the kill threshold, because it still makes you move forward. But bear in mind that that puts the ultimate on cooldown. Shiv has been nerfed about 7 times by now. I still think he's very strong, maybe a little bit too strong. And I know that in higher elos, there are much more like meta builds like Dagger and stuff. And by no means do I think that this build is better, but I think it's more fun. So if you're looking for a new build that is a lot of fun to play and you feel very strong, especially when you're a little bit ahead of souls, why don't you try out this build? It's available both on Mobalytics and in-game. It's called Melee Shiv. You can search for AverageJonas as well. And also, we are almost at 700,000 subscribers, and I would love if you guys subscribe because we're going to make a special top 5 laning duos video for you very soon. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy the video. Don't forget to leave a comment down below of what you think. See you in the next one.